This is the Rat Camp Podcast. I'm Tim Harden. In this episode, we're chatting with Jason Price of The Experience about destination big game hunting and the cool work that The Experience does with film and more. Let's chat with Jason. All right, we're here with Jason Price of The Experience. Jason, welcome to the Rat Camp Podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So for those who aren't familiar, and if people are visitors of the site, they ought to be familiar, but what is The Experience?
That's a good question. It's, it's made up of a lot of different things, and I guess the coolest thing about it is it can be really described a lot of different ways. And from the very beginning, I tried to not make it about one specific thing because we all hunt a certain way, but it's also different. And we're also, although we all are very passionate about hunting and love hunting, we are different individuals and we put different values on different things. And how the experience relates to an individual watching it may be completely different the way that that I perceived it when I was going on the hunt. So our overall goal was really trying to capture the experience of any given hunt, and I knew early on that was unattainable. You're never going to capture the full experience of the hunt just because it does have so many different meanings to so many different people. But in a nutshell, we were just trying to show really cool hunts and cool destinations, and focus more on the hunt or the animal or the destination or the people of that specific area rather than the individual hunter.
Yeah, and I'm excited to dive into that part, and that's maybe I'm already diving in, but that's one big thing that's already different. When I grew up, I had all these videos of guys who were just talking about themselves and their experience and stuff like that, and in this case, it's almost as much about the destination, the viewer. I'm gonna hold off on that. I'm gonna get back to that because I won't stop talking. But before I do, who makes up this group that you're with?
So right now, everyone hunters. It's not that's and you did touch on a little bit, and not to go down that rabbit hole, which I'm sure we'll probably stay down at the entire time. But that's the thing that I tried to accomplish from the very beginning was not to make it about an individual. Of course, I do have a core group of guys. Dan Catlin, a really good friend of mine, kind of started this deal with me. TJ Sanchez, Sawyer Peacock. There's a lot of guys out there that have contributed to this. Mark Peterson, Aaron DeRozan. There's a ton of guys that we were able to film that make up the experience. But just like we were saying before, it's not an experience of an individual; it's the experience of hunting. And so that I know that's a vague answer. That's not an answer that is real descriptive, but that's what it is. And like you, I grew up watching those individual personalities on television, and yeah, I liked watching it. I loved watch hunting videos, and I did it in between hunts. And growing up whitetail hunting, we had, like, this will date me a little bit. We had VCR players and our little campers, and we were watching guys whitetail hunting. So I just didn't want, from the very beginning, I didn't want it to be about an individual, because ultimately what happens, there's a couple of things that happen. Number one, you relate to the person and you watch it, and you're a lifelong viewer of that individual. But at some point, people start getting jealous of that individual getting to go on all those cool hunts. So you're like, oh, I'm not going to watch him anymore. Or number three is you just don't relate to that type of hunter, so you don't watch it. So I wanted to try to check all the boxes and appeal to all hunters. And I knew if I focused on the experience of the hunt rather than individual personality, then it had a lot more appeal to a broader audience.
Yeah, when I watch some of that older content that we're referring to, in a way, it kind of makes me feel bad, because I'm like, yeah, I'll never see deer like that, or I'll never be that successful. Not that, and of course that part of that is me trying to measure up against a standard that I shouldn't measure up against. But you know, it's about that person, and you know, it's fine. But
Yeah, I mean, and for a long time, that's what sold. I mean, that's what that's the way marketing was. And it's just it's completely different today. Digital content is more accessible today, and the more eyeballs you can get your content in front of, the better off. So just it almost seemed like common sense to me. The more broad I can make it, the more overall audience I could appeal to. But that there's still hints of those old influences in our films. I mean, I've kind of combined a lot of different aspects of it, and I'll throw out a couple names like Ivan Carter from the Africa side of things. Chafuti Safaris early on did a really good job of filming a bunch of different individuals as opposed to one person, but they still had that one kind of personality, whether it was Ivan Carter or there was one other one there for a while that they had. And Jim Shockey from the perspective of, I think it was his film Uncharted. I just like the cinematography aspect of it, so kind of adopted that. A guy named J. Allen Smith, and the dude is funny. And so I wanted to have some of the humor in the films because that's what it really is. I mean, hunting is successes and failures and humor. And you're not always gonna get the animal. You're not always gonna take the right approach on the stalk. Sometimes you're gonna be too aggressive. Sometimes you're gonna be too passive. But I wanted to show the real aspect of it.
and ultimately, it
So,
comes down to the experience over the kill.
oh,
And
absolutely. And you said something earlier about the destinations, and when I first started this, I had a real stupid, like, it was going to be called the Destination Hunter. That was so stupid. And I was on a Dall sheep hunt in Alaska with a really good friend, Bob Summers. And really, in a nutshell, this kind of encapsulates the origins of the experience. Is I was on this hunt. He knew what I was doing. I had a videographer. I was lucky from the very beginning. I had some people that believed in a concept that I had in a really saturated market. I mean, everyone wants to film their hunts at this time, and having people to believe in me was really good and advantageous early on. And Bob was one of those. He's one of my best friends in the world now, and we met hunting. And I couldn't capture that aspect of the hunt on the experience, but it has definitely been an influence. And on this hunt, it was a grueling Dall sheep hunt. Our very first film. I think we walked 75 or 80 miles on this hunt, and at the end of the hunt, um, we were back at the base camp, and he's like, "Man, you need to call this the experience."
mm,
And I was like, "Done." I mean, like, it was just like that. So we make this film. Someone, I have a guy there. Nate is filming it. He doesn't know anything about the title of what we're going to call ourselves, and my editor has no clue. And during the film, it's almost eerie when you go back and listen to it, the audio aspects of it, just talking about the experience of the hunt. And it almost like we planned it, but the title actually came after the hunt entirely. So in a nutshell, that's really the origins of it. And from that point on, we've been trying to, capture the experience of hunting, and from different perspectives of, each individual hunter.
that's great. And I think one of the things I love most about what you do is I feel like as the viewer, I'm taken along on the trip too. And I get a lot out of it, other than seeing like, big whitetails or something. And have you ever seen the surfing film Zen and Zero by chance?
I have not.
I ask this to people all the time, and the answer is always no. It it came out about 15 years ago, and I do work in fly fishing film, and I'm not crazy about a lot of fly fishing films. I'm not crazy about a lot of hunting films, and so, but I'm really into outdoor films. And because I can't find really what I want most of the time in fly fishing and hunting, I watch surfing films, climbing films, and I don't surf or climb, but I think they do a better job of telling a story. And Zen and Zero is one I bring up all the time. It's one of my favorites. It's kind of crudely filmed, and it's really long. I don't remember how long it is, maybe 90 minutes or something. Yeah, it's exactly 90 minutes. But it follows these guys with great narration, stopping everywhere along the way as they take this surf trip, this surfing road trip from LA to Costa Rica. I can't stop watching it. I've been watching it for 15 years over and over and over again. But it reminds me of your films too, because you guys go to some of the most exciting destinations, and oftentimes the hunting part is not the majority of the content in the film, but the journey along the way.
Right.
What, there's not a lot that came before you that does that. What made you head in that direction?
So your movie is Zen and Zero. Mine is Planet Earth.
Oh, nice.
I, I watched that, like, I bet I've seen that film 25 times. And I mean, this series is pretty long, so it's kind of my go-to, just relaxing film. You know, I think from the very beginning, the travel aspect of it to me was what was super intriguing. Just going to those different destinations and hunting the different species. I'm just a Texas guy that grew up hunting whitetails and rabbits and squirrels, and seeing that there's all this diversity out there. I was just super intrigued with the whole package of international hunting. And along the way, I think you go to the kind of the joke is you go to Africa once and you're a professional travel agent. It's really kind of true. I mean, you just learn so much. I mean, there's so many different forms you have to fill out. There's permits, there's vaccination issues. There's a ton of stuff that you have to do. So you do become really well versed, like, immediately. And I think people are most scared, may not be the word, but like, just they're the most concerned on international huntings about the travel. And if I'm talking to someone about a hunt, I mean, whether it's Kyrgyzstan or Azerbaijan or Tajik or Kazakhstan, wherever, out of 10 questions, 7 or 8 of them are going to be about the travel.
Yeah.
So I saw that there was a big demand there for people trying to figure out, how do you get there? And, why would you go there? So I definitely wanted to focus on the travel of it, because the travel was a big part of the experience of the hunt. I mean, I can't think of any other reason I'd go to Istanbul, except, that's usually kind of the jumping off point for, going to some of those other destinations. And, I was telling my wife the other day, if I were to pick one international destination to just go, like, have a family vacation to, it would be, Turkey. It's an unbelievably beautiful country. New Zealand would be in the top of that. But I mean, it's just, I think the focus of it has to encapsulate the entire experience of the hunt and travel. I mean, to get to Tajik, it's really 3 days. So, how can I not show, a lot of that when you're spending 6 or 7 days at most hunting and, 5 days traveling? You're definitely going to have to show that aspect of it.
Yeah. You mentioned that you spent a lot of time just hunting in Texas. And I hate to say just hunting in Texas. I mean, Texas is great, but looking at where you've been, there's been some movement since then. How did that get going? Right. Because I'm sure
it's a simple answer. It's a very simple answer. Elk hunting.
Okay.
So growing up Texas, whitetail's it. That's the main animal. Everyone does it. There's a ton of diversity in Texas as far as animals. I mean, we do have sheep, mule deer, antelope, whitetail. We actually have elk, aoudad. There's a ton of free range animals in Texas, but I mean, in East Texas, I mean, I didn't have access to that. I didn't have, I really didn't have a whole lot of knowledge of it. And I'm talking, when I'm 11, 12, 13 years old. I went on an elk hunt, another one of those things with one of my lifelong friends now, Chris Gakama. He operates Compass West Outfitters in New Mexico. And it was such an unbelievable experience, not to keep throwing the word out there, but It was an archery hunt. It was a lot of close contact with screaming elk. And literally at that point, I mean, it was a physical hunt. It was challenging. It was exciting. And at that point, like, I can vividly remember thinking to myself, you know, I have missed this up until this point for my entire life. Had no idea that there was this kind of opportunities. And what else is there? So that was really the beginning of it.
It sounds like it provoked something in you that has been pretty restless because you've been to a lot of places.
For sure. But
You,
the challenge of the mountains is, everybody envisions their hunt, at the beginning of it, like holding the animal and, having the photo taken of whatever species you're after. But for me, it's always been the challenge of the hunt. It's been, tackling any specific mountain. If there's not a lot of challenge in it, I just don't get a whole lot of satisfaction. I want the hunt to be hard. Now, don't get it wrong. We go on a hunt that's extremely difficult. I'm not going to turn away an animal because it's easy. Because you're going to have those opportunities come up and you have to take advantage of them. Otherwise, usually you get one opportunity and that's it. But just if I look back on all of the hunts, the ones that were the most challenging, the most physically draining, were always the ones that were the most rewarding. And I think that was the contrasting difference between, my whitetail hunts of sitting in a deer blind and, let's just face it, in Texas, we use feeders and waiting on the feeders to go off. And I mean, I spent 5-6 years just watching the deer and not shooting any of them. I just loved being out there. But the contrasting difference of, sitting there waiting as opposed to being active and using physical abilities, more mental than physical, actually, just because, I mean, there's a lot of times you're fighting those demons within about, quitting. Can I take this next step? And I just think the challenge of it was so different, that lit a fire in me to find that next challenge.
when you think of challenging hunts, what are some of the more challenging ones that stick out in your mind?
Well, any sheep in North America is going to be challenging. Mountain goats, and I just, kind of stick to the North American species for now, are challenging. Both of those are physically challenging. We call it hump day 3. And, I would imagine if you polled 100 guys that had gone on their first sheep hunt, probably 65 or 70 of them didn't make it past day 3. So those are grueling, but they're usually, the sheep hunts are usually more of a mental battle of, just keep fighting and keep climbing. The goat hunting is usually a little bit more difficult just because, they're a little bit higher than the sheep. I mean, a lot of people say that goat hunting starts where sheep hunting ends. So those are challenging. Brown bear in Alaska, I mean, you're not doing a ton of walking, but I mean, the weather's just miserable. So, there in itself is a challenge. Leopard hunting in Africa, probably the most mentally challenging thing I've ever done in my entire life. And, I've been lucky enough to have 3 successful leopard hunts, but I mean, it's extremely mentally challenging. I mean, there's points in that hunt that I actually thought about shooting myself in the leg, just so like global rescue would come get me, but I was afraid I'd hit my femoral artery. It's just, you're sitting for hours on end in some of the most uncomfortable positions in the world. And you're thinking, I spent all this time and effort and money and energy to go do this hunt, and all I'm doing is sitting here, miserable. So that's a mental challenge. The sheep and goats internationally are tough. But they're tough in a different way. A lot of that travel is draining, and then it's like you're sitting on your butt for 3 or 4 days, and then all of a sudden you get out and you got to climb, and it's fast paced. It does seem like the animals internationally, especially in the Middle East, are somewhat a little bit more accessible. I don't know if you're hunting on smaller areas with more animals, as opposed to like Alaska. It's such a vast area, and it feels like at times you're looking for a needle in a haystack. But you have to kind of factor in, you're not eating the greatest diet when you're on international hunts. It's not the greatest sleeping situations a lot of times. I mean, a lot of my hunts I've been in a cave, or that's if I'm lucky. So The combination of all of those, sheep and goat hunts are difficult. I mean, the elk hunts, they're difficult. So I think there's this competitive nature in most of us hunters, and who shoots the biggest elk or who shoots the biggest deer, sheep, or goat. But there's also that competitiveness in us of who had the more difficult hunt. How hard they worked, and you just kind of compete. You just compete with each other in that way, and so again, it boils back down to the experience. It's how that individual hunter perceived it, and if you're pushing yourself beyond what your expected or your perceived limitations were before the hunt, then good for you. And everyone is going to put a different value on the expenditure of that energy or effort or the fact that they didn't quit. So I've had a lot of difficult ones, but I've had a lot of easy ones.
Yeah, it's interesting what you're saying there about competition because it's true, and I try not to be too competitive of a person, but I've noticed that for hunting, I have to be competitive just to keep
Yeah.
driving me. And um, I was talking to
Oh,
my
I'm super competitive.
okay, I
I
was
mean, like, it doesn't matter. I will compete on with anything. I love that part of it. And, I'm really, when you're out there on the mountain and you're by yourself a lot of times, I mean, I'm with a camera guy, but you are competing, with yourself. Um, you're competing with, that part of your mind or your body that wants to shut down when, you don't think you can take another step. So, I'm just kind of thinking about it, but to take a step back a little bit, you asked which one was the most difficult. The Pakistan hunt for the ibex was, probably one of the most difficult hunts, and I think you just have to factor in a lot of different aspects of that hunt that made it difficult. Um, the food was not good. The sleeping conditions weren't great. It was a lot of travel. It was the third animal on the trip. I pretty much zigzagged across the entire country. Um, I was lucky enough on the way to be able to take the 35-minute flight into the hunting area, as opposed to the 19-hour drive that I had to take on the way back because the flight didn't go. But Sawyer on that particular hunt had gotten food poisoning from eating raw chicken, and he actually knew the chicken was raw, but was so hungry he still ate it.
oh
So, yeah, which shows a little bit about Sawyer, which and he spent the entire night throwing up, and I had to leave. I want to say I left at about 2:30 that morning to start the climb. I mean, he physically couldn't go. I tried to film that myself a lot, and you'll see there's little clips that we'll be releasing here and there, but it was extremely difficult. I think we started out at like 6,000 feet elevation, ended up shooting that ibex at about 14,000 feet, and all the at the same time Sawyer's in some Pakistani hospital getting an IV. So it was pretty tough. And I shot the animal. We go up to where I'd hit it, and the animal jumps up and runs up the mountain some more, and we get into just a lot of debris and stuff's starting to fall off the mountain. The weather's terrible. We can't see, so we end up having to come back down without the animal for that day. And when I get back, and Sawyer at this time's better. I get back at 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, and Sawyer's better at this time. And he's like, "Well, how'd it go?" I said, "Man, it was great. It was challenging. It was hard work." He said, "Where's the animal?" I said, "I had to leave it up there." He said, "You going back up there?" And I said, "I don't know. I'm gonna have to take a long time to think about that."
wow,
So ultimately, we got the animal, but it was a struggle. So that was probably the most difficult. But I mean, again, that's probably the most fresh as well. I mean, we could talk about a lot of other difficult ones along the way, but and my definition of a difficult hunt: if you're sleeping in a bed at night and there is relatively good food, it's not a difficult hunt. If you're in a tent and you're eating Mountain House or whatever it is you brought, um, that's going to be a difficult hunt. Just because you're not ever going to fully get the rest you need on an intense, high impact hunt like that. So at the end of the day, if you're going back to a hotel room or you're getting to eat regular food, it's a relatively easy hunt because you're going to be able to kind of refuel yourself. But, those 10, 15, 18-day hunts in the mountains, I mean, those are difficult.
When I, looking at this Pakistan video and others too, there's a scene where you're giving a lot of hugs. I imagine your trips have really allowed you to be immersed in different cultures and meet interesting people. How has that part of your hunting been for you?
That's a great question. That's the craziest thing of this whole process. When I go to these places, I mean, let's be honest. Most of these places are third world countries. You know, Americans have it really good. Contrary to all the media you see. I mean, we have it really, really good. And I'm always a little guilty when I get to these destinations. I have the very best hunting equipment. I've got the best GPSs. I bring in a camera guy. He's got the very best camera equipment, and I always feel a little guilty with these people at first. I'm like, they're just gonna feel like they don't have anything, and they're gonna wish that they lived in America and they had all that stuff. But the craziest thing is, I find myself by the time I leave, I find myself wanting to be more like them, and it's nuts. I mean, I can remember in let's see, we were in Tajikistan, and we go into this yurt, and this lady's just standing outside it. She's smiling. She's asking us to come in. I think she's got some, like, I don't know, it's yak meat or uh, who knows what kind of meat it was. But I guarantee what she was heating it up with was yak manure. That was how she was able to get her fire going. And so she's heating up our food over a pile of crap. And this lady is so happy. She's got a rug laid out. I mean, it's just a four-wall house. She's got an old VCR hooked up to a car battery cable, playing Jackie Chan movies from 1978 or 80 or something. And she's overcome with joy. I mean, she is just so happy that we're there sharing a meal with her in her home. And to see that happiness, um, I mean, you really take a step back, and you realize, hey, I don't have to have all these material things to be happy. And it's really one of those inner self moments for you where you really kind of wake up and you say, hey, I need to start appreciating the things I have a little bit more.
I imagine along the way you've had some pretty wild adventures too. Um, some of these car rides I've seen are enough to make me think about different places other than the
Yeah,
ones I'm seeing.
so I never want any of the episodes to be about me, but I think every hunter that knows anything about the experience knows I get extremely car sick.
I'm with you.
And to spend that much time in the cars, um, just needs to kind of validate my mental toughness. I think that's what everybody needs to think of. They need to think that, man, he's really mentally tough if he's willing to go be car sick, and for 19 hours to go hunt, some ram. But yeah, those car rides are quite the adventure. I'm in the Karakoram Highway. I mean, I think that's actually nicknamed the Highway of Death. Um, it's a little weird and unnerving, with machine guns pointed at your vehicle as you're driving by. It is a little unnerving when you have armed guards that have to get out of the car every time you have to throw up. So yeah, there's been some crazy things. The poaching aspect of it is the craziest. I mean, I think that's been, out of all the times or all the places I've been, the only time and I don't know if the word scared or just is right, but highly anxious moments have been, when we've met up with poachers, especially when those poachers are armed. So yeah, that's probably the most unnerving aspect of it.
Yeah, I bet. And then you've got these physically demanding hunts, and you've been to so many different places. What you mentioned Pakistan, I can't imagine that being not being one of the most memorable trips you've taken. But what among all these trips would you say are among the most memorable?
I think the best way I can answer that is where would I go back?
Okay.
Um, if which hunt would I redo or which hunt would I do again? I would go to Pakistan again. There's a ton of diversity there. There's a lot more opportunities to hunt sheep. I would like to hunt the blue sheep there, which is really probably the most physically grueling hunt there is in the world. You could do it there or Nepal. It's weird and it sounds almost crazy. I'd probably choose Pakistan just because I've got some friends there now,
Hmm.
and how in the world would I have friends in Pakistan? Other than through hunting. So that would probably tip the scale for me to do that one. Like I said before, I love Turkey. It's a cool destination. A lot of historically rich culture there. Spain is one of those that I would definitely go back to. There's a ton of diversity there. The food's awesome. You could sleep in a bed at night, so that's a plus. Um, I can't think of any of them that I wouldn't go do again. Um, so it's hard to like pinpoint which one above all others. That's tough. I mean, usually the question I get is, what's your most favorite hunt, or and, I have a cocky answer to it. My most favorite hunt's always the next one. Um, so it's hard. It would be hard to pinpoint one specific hunt. Um, you'd have to kind of narrow it down a little bit about species, or the expense of the hunt, or the time frame of the hunt. There'd be a lot of different factors in it, but just as far as being able to go to those other places and see the different culture, meet the different people, and it's been great in every single one of those countries I've gone to. I mean, every single one of those places seem like they genuinely want us there.
This next question is one that I'm reluctant to ask, but I know listeners want to know. Um, and you don't have to go through all of it, but as far as big game species, what have you hunted?
Well, we start at the biggest elephant.
Oh, wow.
Um, I was one of the very fortunate ones to be able to do. I did a lion, a leopard, elephant, and a Cape buffalo on one trip to Africa,
Wow.
which just doesn't happen anymore. So if we just take the Africa aspect of the things, those four. I've never gotten to hunt rhino. Um, I had an opportunity to dart one time for. I think they said it had ticks in the ears, and we just couldn't make that happen. There has to be a biologist on scene, and a couple of different people have to be there. We just couldn't make it happen. But that would have been a really cool experience. Um, the bears of Alaska, brown, black, grizzly. Um, three of the four sheep of North America. Hopefully in a couple of weeks we hear that the Canadian border is opening back up. I have a trip to Alberta scheduled for this fall. I spent 18 days there 2 years ago, and I mean I saw one legal ram. I saw one illegal ram that was a 10-year-old double broomer. That's Canada's just got this weird management practice of not shooting double broom rams. They almost they almost entice you to shoot the younger rams just because they're not broomed. Um, a lot of the goats. Um, it's kind of been a diversity of a lot of different animals. So without getting into too many particulars, I think I've shot 10 or 11 different goat species, 8 or 9 different sheep species. And then, the North American game, whitetail, mule deer, elk, antelope, the bears. I'm sure I'm forgetting some, but I really actually have never counted.
That's great. What's that sheep that you need to get?
The bighorn.
The bighorn, yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
And it's tough. I mean, all the sheep hunts are tough. The Dall sheep hunt is kind of where everyone starts sheep hunting. That's the beginning of, the suck because they're extremely expensive. There's no guarantee that you're going to get any of them. The stone sheep and the bighorn are I think the most difficult ones to be successful on. Um, I hunted with my good friend Shane Black on my stone sheep, and I got really lucky on I think the third day. Um, so ironically, that was the easiest one of them. I did the desert sheep in Mexico, which that's not an extremely difficult hunt. If I had to do it over again, I would have made that my last one. But like everyone else, I mean, I started with a Dall sheep, and I've been unsuccessful one out of the 4 attempts on trying to get the four, and hopefully this next time I'll get it done.
Yeah, I realized you did say bighorn earlier before I asked. I was just trying to keep track of all those species. Um, and I looked this morning. It's July 1st when we're recording this. I was looking at that bighorn Wyoming preference point, thinking about it.
Yeah, and
But
it's extremely hard to draw any of those sheep in North America, but you're also crazy for not trying.
yeah, and it happens. I applied in Montana this year, and one of my friends just like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking you're going to draw that? I want a drift boat.
Yeah.
I want a drift boat for $100, and that's what I always
Oh
tell
wow.
people. Yeah, the odds are better for the
Yeah.
drift boat, but hey, it's about 80 feet away from me right now, and
Right.
it was 100
Yeah.
bucks. So
Well, you have zero chance if you don't put in for the draw.
that's right. And I know a few people who have drawn on their first or second try with some animals, not sheep, but stuff happens.
Yeah.
Um, getting back to your films, they're so different. They're so good. They really tell a full story. I learned more about destinations just visually through the films um, than I ever could have imagined. When you're creating, what are the takeaways or goals that you have, or the takeaways you would have for the viewer, goals you might have for yourself or for the film? What's the process on that end?
So for me, it just has to be like super cinematography rich. And that's so it covers up like my personality on film. So people won't really even pay attention to, what kind of bad hunter I am or what kind of idiot I am. So if the, if it's visually pleasing, it can cover up a lot of stuff. Really, in a nutshell, we just try to film the experience of the hunt. The guys that are with me now kind of know the format of how we lay it out. Um, I've had 3 different editors since this began. Obviously, as you progress to the next editor, they have some sort of preconceived idea of what our films are like. So it does get a little bit easier. And I've never put a whole lot of, I mean, at the very beginning I did, but I just, man, I leave it to the editors to be creative. And I've been really successful in that. I mean, there's some guys that we tried out and you didn't see those films because they were more that TV style, where, a lot of commentating, a lot of talking, a lot of pushing products. Um, you know, that was one of the other things from the very beginning. I didn't want it to be product specific, because we are also different. Me, um, I believe in Kuyu products and I wear Kuyu on the mountain, but I don't have to say that. I mean, people see me doing it. Dan Catlin believes in cryptic, and Dan doesn't have to go out and say, I believe in cryptic, and this is why I wear it. I mean, you see him on there wearing it, and there's certain people that are going to associate with that and that person or that product, and just like they will with me. So, you know, in a nutshell, the diversity of the individuals on there actually, brings in more audience as well, and it brings in more opportunity for different companies to market their product in a completely different way. So, we try not to make our, long run answer. We try not to make the episodes about any product, gear, individual, or anything. It's just, we're just showing the experience of hunting. We're showing the travel. We're showing these, those mountainous destinations that are beautiful landscapes. Um, the drone definitely helps in a lot of those areas when, we're legally able to do it. But there's no specific format other than, just trying to encapsulate on film the experience of hunting, which, I said before, it's impossible, but, we do get better at it on some films and then we take step backs on others.
What's I mean, I'm a fan, and we talked about that before, and so I've got you guys bookmarked, even though I'm a subscriber on YouTube, but I keep checking in case I miss something. So I think like a lot of people out there, I'm wondering, what's next?
Yeah.
When do I get my next fix?
Yeah.
And what are you guys working on?
So really soon, we have, I think I have 5 films ready right now. And I'm strategically waiting to release them just because, I mean, with the pandemic, there's been a lot of things kind of change. Everybody's been kind of in a lull for the last, 6 months to a year. The last real thing we did, I think, was that 5 and 5, where we did 5 films in 5 weeks. Um, and I've got a doll sheep hunt. I've got an Iranian red sheep hunt. I have a moose hunt. We have brown bear and black bear hunts. I know I'm missing one in there, but all those films are ready, um, and we will start releasing those in the fall. Probably the first to the middle of August, we'll start releasing those.
That's exciting.
So a lot of cool films coming out, and we have been in a little bit of a lull, but rolling into convention season again, which hopefully we all get to kind of meet up at those conventions, which we missed out on last year, and we should be going strong by then again.
Good. Another theme I've seen from you guys, and I've seen you doing films and work for conservation organizations. Why do you? I mean, I think we all have a duty to, but why do you have this emphasis on conservation?
Well, I mean, I think the conservation aspect of it is really important. I mean, I've had a lot of conversations with non-hunters on airplanes to some of these destinations, and the first thing that jumps out to people's mind is the Disney aspect of it, because they're humanizing a lot of the animals, and we're just like everyone else. There's an emotional aspect to taking the life of an animal. Absolutely. I mean, I still have it as well. But we also, as hunters, we have a responsibility to promote conservation and the education of conservation through hunters and new young hunters. And there's a great value to what we do as hunters if we're good stewards of the land and of the animals. I think it's our responsibility as hunters to maintain the population of animals, if not increase those population of animals. Um, I've been a part of some really cool projects. First one that comes to mind is a really good friend of mine, Brendan Burns at Kuyu. He called me up about this conservation deal he was doing, Conservation Direct, entirely company funded, a company and customer funded. I think, if I remember right, there was like 16 of us that helped fund it, and I could be wrong about that. Released 3 different herds of sheep at once, not relocating one sheep, herds. A lot of pregnant ewes. I think that was it was Rocky Mountain bighorn sheep. It was in the Badlands and Antelope Island there in Utah. So that's really cool aspect of it. GSCO, Grandson Club Ovis, is one of those organizations that's really, I really think they do a good job. Wild Sheep Foundation does an excellent job. Dallas Safari Club does a good job. SCI does a great job. SCI does it probably more from the national political aspect of the things, but just that conservation direct thing on the ground, that instant results was really cool. And as hunters, we need to understand our responsibility. But I don't want, and a lot of these organizations are constantly pushing conservation, conservation, conservation. But the last thing I want is the passion of hunting to not be portrayed. And we try to be good stewards of the land and the animals. I should say we try to portray that on the film. But equally as important, if not more important, we try to show that passion and that love for it. And I think that's what grows our sport more. And I think as a result of that, it does increase the value of conservation, it increases the education of conservation. So in the long run, the conservation is a byproduct of our love and our passion, as opposed to the other way around.
That's terrific. And um, shoot,
Because I mean, really and truly, without without that and without that control, there's no animals for me to pursue. The easiest animal that I can really relate to when I'm speaking to a non-hunter is the African leopard. If there was no value to that animal, I mean, just imagine if you had one cow and that was your source of food for your family for, for the year, and a leopard comes in one night and eats that cow. Well, we're going to go out and shoot the leopard. Well, because there is a value to that animal, because there is a demand to hunt that animal, now instead of those people going out and shooting those animals because they're a risk to their herd, they're going out and they're actually protecting that animal because they realize it has a value on it. So they're able to get a source of income from something that they would literally decimate if there was no value in the animal.
Yeah, and it's just the case with hunting and fishing that you know, sentiment towards ecosystems and animals just isn't enough to protect them against, you know,
Right.
other.
And I think the knock on us as hunters is we're heartless human beings going out and killing animals. And, you know, there are a lot of guys that are in the film industry. I mean, neither one of us would name names, but we should, that, just indiscriminately go out and shoot things. And I think that's a bad knock on hunters. But within every group, there's good stewards of the group, and in every group, there's bad ones. And that's not just hunting specific. I mean, that's everything. So, just for us as individuals, we need to promote the conservation value. But more importantly, we need to make sure that we show the love for and the respect for the animals and the hunt and the experience of the hunt.
If people are listening, and there's going to be a variety of different people listening. Some people might be, 16 years old and like eager to take on the world. Other people might be trying to figure out what to do with, a little extra money that they made or invested in, with this year. Um, what would you say are people's options or starting points when it comes to conservation? Because I think sometimes people don't realize how many different ways we can all contribute.
Yeah, I think it's pretty simple. Be involved in one of those conservation organizations, Wild Sheep Foundation, like we talked about, Dallas Safari Club, SCI, Grand Slam Club Ovis, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation. There's a ton of those, and there's a ton of value to being a part of those. I mean, if I'm just coming up with a few, I mean, Wild Sheep Foundation has a really cool less than one club where you have an opportunity, if you've never shot a sheep, to sign up as a member, and you're in a drawing every single year to win a free sheep hunt. Not to mention the conservation things that they do and all the great benefits, but there's a great benefit, especially to young hunters, to be involved in that. Grand Slam Club Ovis has one of the best, if not the best, hunting magazine in the world, and that's coming from a digital guy. It's an unbelievable magazine. They have a great awards platform to kind of recognize guys that have been around the world, and in a nutshell, the conservation aspect of that is a byproduct of what they've done. And Dallas Safari Club's a great one just for me here locally. Get involved in those because there's more. I mean, it's really important to be able to network with other hunters. I mean, that's really the cool thing about it. You go to those conventions, you're part of those organizations, you're networking with other like-minded people. You're going to learn about different opportunities. And I really don't care, if you're 12 years old or, get your parents to sign you up. A lot of these have different youth opportunities to sign up for. There's usually some sort of hunting convention pretty much everywhere across the United States. So you never really, like me, when I was younger, if I'd had those opportunities, I would have learned about those other hunting opportunities way earlier than that one elk hunt I got to go on. So I would be involved in those, but buy hunting licenses, go hunting, put in for the draw. Anything that you can do to be a part of hunting is going to contribute to that conservation aspect of it.
And one of those last points is a good one. I mean, I was telling you earlier that I was debating the the points and the super tag and everything in Wyoming, but you know, it's worst case, it's a donation. And California this year had a ton of lotteries that were pretty cheap, like $10
Hmm.
each.
Yep.
And in my mind, it's like, okay, this is the least I can do, and maybe walk away with something cool.
Yeah. And that's what Wild Sheep does a really good job of with the Less Than One Club. That's, I mean, who doesn't want to win a free sheep hunt? And they do a really good job of only putting guys in there that, you know, have never been on a sheep hunt before. So it's, if I was a 15-year-old, I would be a member of the Less Than One Club right now. And that's really, really cool. But, you know, any of those local organizations you can be involved in and educate yourself on the responsibilities as hunters and the conservation aspect of it is going to be a benefit for you in the future.
Yeah, one thing that was just making me laugh. My wife was pregnant last year, and I gave her my Less Than One Club shirt to wear. And every time she wore it, I was like, "Man, you haven't killed that sheep yet." And
Yeah,
I think I thought it was funnier than she did.
that's real funny for a pregnant lady to wear a shirt that has a less than one on
Oh, right, that's true because the baby's not born yet.
Yeah,
I think.
that's great.
Well, I mean, I could talk to you for hours, and what I'm probably going to do is see if you want to do another one when the
Yeah,
next round of
absolutely.
films come out. But until then, there's so much content. Where can people go to see more and learn more?
Yeah, the easiest way is the YouTube page, just the experience. I think if you type in the experience, it's the first one that comes up. It's the black logo with the experience on it. One thing I would like to just kind of tell people is hit the bell on there, just because that helps you get notified when those films come out. And we've got a lot of cool films coming. We're doing a lot of different things. We've got some new different kind of cutting edge edits that we're working on. But you know, we're just trying to keep up in the game. So check out YouTube, The Experience. We post to Instagram and Facebook occasionally. I don't do it as much or as often as I should, but we try to do a lot of the little backstories of some of the hunts on there. In the fall, we will be doing it a little bit differently. We'll be doing 2 to 3 week just kind of promos on the social media sites before we drop the film, and start engaging people on, you know, just to get questions about the hunts. I mean, you can't imagine how many questions we get asked about different types of hunts. So just try to educate people from a different standpoint, show them the value of the hunt, show them what the hunt's going to be like, and then at the end, show them the film.
That's great. Well, I'm looking forward to more.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Um, I appreciate everything you guys do. Um, Rat Camp is actually on our pie chart of where we get a lot of our views. So I
Oh, that's great.
appreciate you guys. It's awesome what you guys are doing, and we appreciate what you've done for the experience.
Well, thanks for coming on, and look forward to more conversations down the road.
Absolutely, man.
Thanks.